It's your boy Conserviz34, and today I want to talk about 21 Pilots, a band that's following this current generation of youth in a way that Blink-182 and Green Day and many other bands of my era followed us, and as bands of the grunge era like Nirvana and Pearl Jam and many other bands followed the previous era, and so on, dating back to many bands of many generations that inspired the youth to fall in love with music, to follow this music on a journey. One thing that has shocked me here about 21 Pilots is the vast difference between their album sales, now that they are mainstream, now that their music is on the radio for an album cycle of Blurryface, and how the album sales are much different than the success they've had with the Bandito tour, which is coming up here. It started already, and it's going to be continuing through here to, pretty much 96 total shows. You got some in, you got 27 in North America, 6 in Australia, 29 in Europe, and that's through 2018, 34 in North America, 2019. It's a lot of shows they're going to be doing here in the United States, and they're all sold out. But when you look at how the recent album did sales-wise, it did just about the same as the previous album, and this is shocking because, again, the demand for the tickets is very high, and this band, in the Blurryface era of its last album promotion, gained an entire mainstream audience they didn't have before. You have songs like Heathens on movies that are making the band bigger. You have singles like Tearing My Heart and The Judge and other songs here, Heavy Dirty Soul, that just captured their a different level of fandom than they had back in the early days. But people aren't buying the album, and we're going to go over some numbers just to show this. Now, let's go back to Blurryface. That was released here back in, a couple years ago. I think that was 2015, 2016 era. And that album was the album that put 21 Pilots on the mainstream map. They had other albums like Vessel and, an album they did kind of twice across two different labels. And then the self-titled 21 Pilots before that. I'm probably a little off there. But they weren't mainstream. Blurryface, its first week, remember, this was before they got the big push of the success of the singles from it. It sold 134 actual units, meaning 134,000, meaning the album was purchased in one format or another, CD, digital, high quality, low quality. 134,000 people purchased the entire album in one swoop of a click. When you combine streams, when you combine single sales, they got 147,000 album equivalents. We'll be using this throughout the video. This is how we rate everything else. The singles, people, streaming to a certain amount, everything. And then you add the 134,000 pure album, it gets to 147K or 147,000. Now, let's go to this year, a couple weeks ago, and 21 Pilots has this next album, Trench. In Trench, again, you have a bigger fan base. You have millions more fans that you have that are tied to your hip. And this is what it did. Remember, 134 was the physical units for, the actual pure album sales. For Blurryface, 147K for the actual everything tied together, singles and streaming. Now, Trench sold 175,000 albums equivalent. So that's the streaming, that's everything. Streaming, singles, which were there through July of this year to be purchased, and people bought the singles. Everything all combined was that 175K. And the actual album sold, as far as you click on it, make a purchase by a click of a button, you buy the vinyl, you buy the CD, that's 135,000. So the actual full albums purchased with a click of a button only increased by, from 134,000 to 135,000. That's not much of a change when the band got its biggest jump from, regional at best, as they was one of their albums is called, to being mainstream through Blurryface's success. They only got a little bit more of a push. And the 147K to 175K, that is a little bit of a jump for a band. But again, for as many fans as they have, for as much as they're selling coast to coast, it's a little bit shocking they weren't able to crack 200,000 in streaming and purchases, because again, the kids that listen to this music have access to these streaming services. They have access to YouTube. They have access to, even for a parent to buy the album for them. And the album was promoted through, again, late July. The first singles come out. They could save allowance to buy the album, and they didn't crack 200,000. And matter of fact, 21 Pilots was not even the #1 released album that week. A Star Is Born, the movie with Lady Gaga, that actually took the #1 spot, 165,000 albums sold, and then albums and streaming and singles, 220,000, so they cracked 220K. So that's a little shocking that, again, 21 Pilots did not take that #1 spot. And here's where we take it to an even further level. Let's just compare a hip-hop act. We have the project Drip Harder, and that's, I think it's Lil Baby and Gunna. I listened to this once through my streaming, and I thought it was and I listened to all types of rap, the pure hip hop, the more the mumble rap. I test it out, I give it a shot, everything in between. So I know these artists. They sold 130 album equivalents, streaming, everything all combined, 130,000. Now 121,000 of that was actually streams. And it was not digital purchases, so the majority of that was the streaming. It was the top streamed album that week, I believe. So a lot of it was people streaming and just kind of taste testing the album, but still 130,000 album equivalents, and then 175 album equivalents for 21 Pilots. That's not as big of a gap comparing 21 Pilots selling out arenas. And Lil Baby and Gunna, they perform in clubs, okay? They ain't performing in no arenas unless it's a radio show where they're one of the opening acts, or just one of many featured acts at an award show or kind of music jam for hip-hop. When you have the summer jams or the jingle jams or the hot jams, however your local radio station advertises it, that's the only time they're getting in an arena. And this shows yet again a large distance between what some rock, alternative rock, mainstream, there's not really much mainstream rock anymore, in country music acts. What this shows is a lot of these acts are doing okay with their album sales, just okay in the first week. And sometimes, over a couple of years, they get platinum. So we got to give them that. I'm sure Trench will go platinum at some point. But what's shocking is that the fan support, the anticipation for the album in the first week for these shows, for these bands, isn't that high. It really isn't that high. When many rappers have cracked past 175,000 this year, as far as the J. Coles and the Drakes and so on, a lot of rappers have passed that to 200,000 plus. But Lil Wayne too, and many others I could name. But when it comes to alternative electronic rock like 21 Pilots, their first week sales just aren't that hot. Now, again, it'll probably go platinum, but what's even more shocking again is that people are literally paying hundreds of dollars for these tickets. If you go on StubHub, there's maybe one or two venues that have, pretty decent prices. Everything else, the prices are very high on the secondary just to get into these shows. And there's 96 shows. Matter of fact, before October 2nd, there weren't 96 shows. They added a bunch of shows. They added 34 North American shows really in 2019 to expand this tour. And they added additional dates in certain venues to have 2 nights at a certain city so that they can keep up with the demand. And these tickets keep selling out like that. Now, a lot of brokers are buying these tickets because they know kids love this band. But again, it's only because of the demand. Because look, Mumford & Sons just went on a tour, and guess what? You can find tickets at pretty much every venue, just to prove a point. So brokers know that there's not going to be much selling there. But the demand of 21 Pilots right now for the actual show is very high. But the people actually supporting the album it's very low, which is, again, an album is what? I think I bought Trench because I did support 21 Pilots. I have a couple other albums, Vessel and Blurry Face, and I stream the older stuff. I don't have a purchase. Sorry guys, but again, I stream it. You get a little cash there, but it's only, maybe $11 I paid, 10, 9, like it was like 10 or $11. That's nothing compared to the cost of a ticket that your parent is paying for, or some of these kids are actually, if they're teenagers, are saving up so they can go themselves. Their parents may not have the money, so they're saving up to go to a show, paying $100, $200 for a secondary ticket. So, I mean, I just was shocked at that, but this is a trend that's been starting to go on. You have acts like Kenny Chesney who can sell out a stadium, but they don't go platinum in their first week. It takes a couple weeks, a couple months for Kenny Chesney to go platinum, where a lot of rappers, within 1 or 2 weeks, the top rappers, they're like J. Cole, they go platinum within a week or two. But they're not selling out stadiums. Cole is doing arenas. So it's just very interesting, the purchasing and streaming habits of a hip-hop fan base that supports a Lil Baby and Gunna album versus those who support 21 Pilots versus people who just were so excited about this Lady Gaga movie and soundtrack and what it was going to bring to the fact that it beat 21 Pilots. But what do you guys think? Are you guys, any 21 Pilot fans, put your input in. What do you think of your fan base? The album, to me, I thought it was different, so it turned off some fans. That album was pretty solid to me. It's definitely not as the same as their previous path of having the rapping that Tyler does usually, but I thought it was a pretty dope album after I gave it a couple listens and let it kind of marinate on me. Not an album of the year, but it definitely, with the hype they had, with the pressure they had, they did deliver in many cases. And I love what Josh and Tyler do, and I may make a video coming soon about how this band, I'll tell you this, you can say they're corny, they're cheesy, it's electronic, it's lazy, but that's every mainstream band. Blink-182, their music is basic. It's easy to play. Why? Because 10 years ago when I picked up a guitar, I learned every Blink-182 song within the first year to 2 years of learning guitar. I'm still learning stuff about Grateful Dead stuff, still learning stuff about, other jam bands that I try to learn to play, Allman Brothers music and material I play. But it's always been cheesy and easy to play this type of music. It's been lazy, a lot of electronic effects versus real instruments. But there are instruments in play, and this band is tackling this issue of suicide. They're tackling depression, insecurity, pressure of being a youth. These are the things that are attacking kids nowadays. Kids now, people try to down them, say they're on their phones too much. Kids now are 10 times smarter than when I was in school. I started elementary school in 1995. These kids are smart, but they have these issues mentally that they're struggling more with. It's not as much physical as the bullying when I was growing up. It's more mental. And 21 Pilots is literally saving the lives of lost kids, troubled kids, kids that have it good, that their parents are rich and wealthy, but they're trying to find the meaning of life in a deeper way, and this music reaches them. So this is not to knock 21 Pilots. This is more of a shock to how their fan base hasn't supported them in the album selling category for the first week, all the hype and everything, as they do support them with the tour, where tickets sell out like a blink of an eye. 96 total dates across North America, Europe, Australia, and these tickets, there's not many left, if any. So let me know what you guys think. It's your boy ConcertViz34. That's all I got for today. I'm out.